The children of Israel created quite a problem for Yahweh. You see, there are 7 Moed Mikre, 4 beyond the 3 which were fulfilled a couple of thousand years ago. So when Yahweh demonstrated the purpose of those 3, Pesach, Matzah, and Bakurim, at the inception of the Exodus, and when he then explained them in his Torah, it was in the anticipation that he would honor their promises, which he did through Dod when he fulfilled the first 3 Moed Mikre in the second of his 3 lives. This would have been in 33 CE, which was, of course, year 4000 Yah. And it made the Shabuah and the Teruah harvests possible. But they would still need to be cultivated, and then there would be the expectation of returning on Kippurim to enjoy Sukkah, but that would be with a remnant of the children of Israel. But what if no one knows? What if no one is aware of Yahweh's name, of Dod's role in fulfilling these Mikre? That no one's aware of the purpose of the Moedim, or how they have and will be fulfilled to deliver the benefits of the Bereth. If there isn't an awareness of these things, then it was all for naught. And for the better part of 3,000 years, very few, if anyone, knew what they represented, when they would be fulfilled, how they would be fulfilled, who would fulfill them, what promises they would deliver. And that is why, my friends, there are some 1,000 prophecies regarding the individual that Yahweh chose to convey this vital information to his people, so that there would be voyagers that would be harvested on Shabuah, time travelers gathered in on Teruah, a mortal remnant, not only in Israel, but gathered from around the world to benefit from the sacrifice of the Adamah Parah, all to enjoy the great homecoming on Kippurim, so that they might re-enter Eden on Sukkah. This has been God's plan from the beginning. And while Father and Son explained what was going to occur 7 to 14 centuries before any of it transpired, since Yisrael was lost and Yehudim weren't listening, there would have been no beneficiaries. And there isn't any point to harvesting an empty field or attending a reunion without family. Even worse, with the chosen people having chosen to go it alone, they would not have even survived to this point if someone hadn't looked out for them. And it's certainly not faring very well for them now, as they even are more belligerent, even when the chosen Nakar and Choter of Yahowah tells them that they're making a bad situation worse with their ongoing war in Gaza and their attack on Iran. And that so long as they continue along this path, they will be isolated and, well, they're going to have to endure a 1,000 times worse version of what occurred on October 7th. And it's all because too few have listened. And Yahweh cannot protect people who aren't willing to play a role in their own salvation. So they're just not listening. And without listening, there can be no beneficiaries. And there isn't much point in harvesting, well, having 2 harvests, but having no one there to glean. So God has come within a decade now, less than that actually, of having to give up on humanity, depopulating the planet, seeing the elimination of Israel, witnessing it, having to endure the annihilation of Jews, all of which would occur without Yahweh's intervention. But why bother if there are no beneficiaries, no one to save? If these concerns weren't bad enough, and they are significant, there is another problem because God can't lie. He promised to reconcile the covenant relationship with Israel. But even he can't do that alone. Relationships require a degree of mutuality, and Jews, quite simply, have opted out, preferring to be religious and political. Yet, what was Yahweh to do? Well, Yahweh had to find someone to enable them, to deploy them, and to announce this solution in anticipation that a reasonable number of extraordinary individuals among his people would listen. With nothing, however, having changed much over the past 4 millennia, without a single Israelite engaging with Yahweh based upon his guidance, God chose to intervene by equipping a final witness that was outside the tribe. Because there was no one within the descendants of Jacob through whom to work. And without this individual, there would have been no one to harvest on Shabu and Towrah, to reconcile and return to on Kippurim, or to camp out with come Sukkah. So God came full circle. Just as he began with Goyim, he will conclude his tour de force with Goyim. There would have been no reason to expect a single Yehud otherwise to have anticipated his return with his son or understood why, when, or to whom they were coming. To prevent nullifying, therefore, the entire human experience, the intent of creation, the purpose of the Torah, and the potential of the covenant, the benefits that Dowd provided through his sacrifice, Yahweh instituted what we'll call Plan B. It's Plan Bashar. He would have a herald. Plan C, which is for Choter, the stem off the branch of the tree of lives and a branch off of the tree of knowledge, who would be Plan E, an Ed, witness. A Plan M, a Malak, a messenger. Plan N, a Nakri, observant foreigner. And, well, Plan Z, a Zeroah, one planting the seeds which take root and grow. With a Goy, non-Israelite, to give whole voice to his prophetic testimony. This man would be known as Yada. For this reason, one who knows. Based upon what he would come to comprehend, he would reintroduce Yahweh's name to Yisrael, reacquaint Yehudim with the Dowd, explain the Torah they had forgotten, and to remind them of the invitations to be called out and meet. Particularly the purpose, the actual purpose of Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim, and then serve as the guide on Shabuah and Teruah, even serving as the sacrifice to prepare that final remnant for the Kippurim homecoming. Be the first to acknowledge that the story of Yahweh was coming full circle, and that we would return on Sukkah to the garden that we had left 6,000 years ago. Well, it's all about Yada knowing. It is Well, I think this has nothing to do with that particular individual that bears that name. The man named after the crag that was ablaze to enlighten the world would not have been noticed, much less prevailed, if not for what Yahweh would do with him and through him. But this isn't also true with Adam. I mean, it's true with all of God's characters, the operatives and cast of the great story that he has told, including Adam, Chawah, Noach, Abraham, Sarah, Yitzhak, Rebecca, Jacob, Leah, Rachel, and especially, of course, Moshe and Dod, Samuel even before them, Hosea, Yashaya, Yirmiah, Zechariah, Malachi, and Yoel. Now, since the first 10 people on this list of exemplary characters in God's story were other than Israelites, why wouldn't Yahweh return to where he began with only 10 years remaining, especially with his people out of touch and, well, out of reach? So do you think it's irrelevant that Yahweh revealed through Yashaya that he would endure all of this only to ensure Yada's effectiveness by assigning his 7 spirits to him, doing what he had never done previously? Why do you suppose God inspired Moshe to introduce him, then asked Shalomo to explain the purpose to Yisrael at this time during his commencement speech on the Mount for the completion of the covenant home? Why do you suppose Yashaya devotes so much attention to the Choter and by his many names, including Nakar, the final Zeroah? Why does every prophet speak of this individual? The story is woven through the Torah. Is it because of the obvious that once educated and enabled, he would serve to awaken the chosen people and bring them back to a status that they have seldom known or enjoyed, such that they would finally make the right choice? Is it because there would be a harvest on Shabuah? There would actually be a gleaning on Towrah. There would be a homecoming on Kippurim because of the sacrifice of the Adam of Parah, such that we could all camp out together during Sukkah? Is this the obvious reason for all of this? Well, as he explained to Moshe, having designed us, Yahweh knows how to succeed through us. And that is required of us, or what is required really of us, is to be willing to go where his directions lead. And while I'm obviously the least impressive of the 3 Zeroah, a distinguished but short list that includes Moshe and Dod, as well as, of course, now Yada. We all serve Yahweh's purpose. We work on behalf of God's people, doing so at the right time in the correct way. And that is why there are hundreds of references, if not thousands, to this role throughout the prophets, beginning with Moshe and continuing through Yoel, even into Malachi. And this is another of them. And we are continuing to study the prophet Yoel, who speaks so vociferously of our time. He said, "Who reveals and acknowledges Yada? Who knows and understands Yada? My Yada, who actually notices and demonstrates, appreciates what Yada observes, what he perceives, what he realizes. He will alter the mindset to restore and return the withdrawn. And he will enable consideration while reassuring those willing to change. He will remain to ensure that a remnant is spared in the end. He will be a benefit, a blessing, even a gift, which is bestowed, and a leader, a prince of sorts, installed, appointed, and positioned before Yahweh. Wow, you will. Yahweh is God, Joel 2:14. Like I said, God doesn't want anyone to be surprised. Listen, every time that I read something that speaks of the mission that I'm collaborating on with the Almighty on behalf of his Son and his people, there is a bit of reassurance, then there's a bit of trepidation. With so much writing on what God is saying about what we're trying to achieve, boy, the last thing you want is to let God down. You want to be there for him. You want to give Father and Son your best. And part of it is the realization that every time there is a prophetic statement that speaks of this role, and it is discovered, acknowledged, shared, that it creates a bigger target on me when I explain, well, this is what God said here, and that's what he said there, and he just says this everywhere. But then there's also the recognition that in all of these revelations regarding Yada, that the first person to acknowledge any of them is Yada. And he happens to be the one person who qualifies and meets the criterion that's laid out throughout all of these. And the reason isn't for him. He's simply a tool, an implement that Yahweh is wielding for this purpose. He knows such that the world might know. He understands such that his people might comprehend. So who reveals and acknowledges Yada? Who knows and understands Yahweh? He will alter the mindset to restore and return the withdrawn. That is the mission. Quite truthfully, Moshe, who's far greater man than probably has ever walked the earth, failed. Now, he did his best, and he saw it through, but he gave up just a handful of days out of Towrah because the children of Israel were so egregious. Dode finally gave up. The job was just too much. Hurting Yehudim. Damn difficult task. And Yahweh gave up too. He told his people, all right, you don't want to hear me. You don't want to see from me. That works out for me. I'm going to go back to heaven. And then he even tells us through the prophet Hosea that he's going to sit this out until his people decide to return to him. Shub, which is the next word here after Yada. It's Shub. Once his people return, he'll return to them. But for that to happen, he has to have a Shuber, someone who will encourage his people to do what they have not done in a very long time. So there needs to be a Shuber. I am your Shuber. He will finally alter the mindset and cause the people to change so that they are willing to return. And he will enable reconsideration while reassuring those who are willing to change. He will remain, stick with this job, hang around, be persistent, engaging at this time to ensure that a remnant is spared. Now, he will not do that alone. Yada is being assisted in the last 3.5 years of the time of Jacob's troubles by Elia. And so we will be a tandem team that will work together in the end. But make no mistake, this pronouncement regarding Yada is on behalf of the remnant, this mortal remnant of Israel that will be spared and then be prepared to meet Father and Son. And this will occur at Kar in the last days. He will be a benefit. He's going to be a blessing, God says. He's a gift which is bestowed. I appreciate all of that, but the fact is that that's how Yahweh views all of this. That we are working together, and that what He has provided is a gift to His people, a gift at a time they desperately need it. Just like turning the glass sideways, so my Wookiee can have a glass of tea, and he can't get to the bottom of it unless I hold the glass. So we'll just have to be patient for a moment here as Wookiee satiates his craving for green tea. I don't know if green tea is stunning his growth. He's not a very big guy, so it might be the case. So just as wonderful, sweet, lovable animals are a gift to us and brighten our lives and are a blessing for us, whether they're cats or dogs or whatever we have that is in our home and part of our family. The fact is that Yahweh is offering his associate, Yada. And he considers what Yahweh is contributing through these books that you see behind me, that we have written together through this Yahowah blog that we are doing together. He views that as a blessing, as something that he is presenting and offering to his people. Because my other title is Bashar, Herald, and in this regard, I serve Dode, our returning king. And since God has called the Nakar and Yashaya 56 a son, it would mean that if you're a son of the king and you're a son of God, then you're a prince of sorts. And so that is what is conveyed next. It's this Yada individual is a blessing. He's a gift. And he's the prince of sorts, installed, appointed, and positioned in association with and to approach Yahweh, your God. So after 23 years of private discovery and public disclosure, I have come to view Yahweh's testimony to Israel as if it were written for me, as a member of his covenant family, in addition to being for Israel and for the whole world of Goyim. If it is relevant and true for Yehudim, it is relevant and true for all of us individually. And I share this because I have long encouraged and consistently asked that everyone approach Yahweh's revelation similarly. When it speaks of a gift being offered, when it speaks of us becoming royalty of sorts as part of the covenant family, we should write ourselves into that script. We should say, if this is something God wants, if this is something I can do, what a wonderful way for me to contribute. And so this is how we should view everything God has to say. Making this personal, I see Yahweh acknowledging my roles stated here as Yada, and the one that we would play together in changing the thinking of his people so that Yehudim and some Goyim will return to him during Shabat and Towrah. Many will survive as a result of Yahweh's testimony, as it is presented in the Yada Yahowah series of books that you see behind me, free at yadayah.com. and each reconciled soul will be a blessing to God, a gift to him, just as being part of the covenant family and receiving an inheritance that includes all God has to offer is a gift for the rest of us. Now, that is a pleasing thought indeed. In the context of inspiring his prophet to call his estranged family home after 3 millennia of living apart, this is a poignant pronouncement. One Yahweh has obviously wants us to notice, to comprehend, to share. And so here we are, communicating with one another in this way at this time for this result. For better, not worse. Should that even be possible for Israel? I am Yada. I have been Yada for the last 24 years. For the first time in more than 2,000 years, I have come to know and share Yahweh's name, the purpose of his Torah guidance, his Bereth covenant family, his Mikre invitations to meet. I'm the lone individual in all that time to learn and to share that Dode is the Son of God, the returning Messiah who, as our Savior, fulfilled Pesach, Matzah, and Bekurim as the Zeroah, the sacrificial lamb. And I'm the first to explain the conditions of the covenant and the intent of each of the 7 invitations to meet, even to show how they are related, the covenant and these invitations, the Bereth and the Moedim. I've also been the first to date them all, past, nearly present, and future. Recognizing that Yahweh invests as many words excoriating religion as he does promoting his intended relationship, because really one is not possible without the other. Yada would be the only person in human history to write multiple volumes denouncing Judaism, that's in the Babel series, Christianity in the Twistianity series, and Islam in the Goddamn Religion series, while also extolling the benefits of the Torah in an introduction to God. He would uniquely awaken Yehudim in observations and then call God's people home in coming home. So it would appear that Yahweh has fulfilled this prophecy, and he has exceeded the expectations he has framed it within, especially considering all that was revealed through the Yada Yahowah series, whether that be about creation and particularly its timing, the 4th day, the nature of the flood, the conception of the covenant, the initiation, dress rehearsals, and ultimate fulfillment of the Mikre, of prophecy, and of time. Therefore, the answer to the rhetorical question as to who is Yada, who reveals and acknowledges Yada, who knows and understands these things, well, Yahweh is the one who has revealed Yada. He's the one who understands and has therefore caused Yada to comprehend. And he has done so for the benefit of his wayward children. God wants his people to appreciate what Yada has observed, what he has perceived by studying the prophets. And when this occurs, their minds, their attitudes will change, making a return to God possible. But Shub, my friends, which means return, is a loaded concept. The heirs to the covenant are the best suited to shub, return to it, especially since no one else has been with God until quite recently. Further, shub affirms that Jews cannot come back to Yahweh in their present condition. Their mindset must shub change. They must nakam, reconsider Yahweh's testimony and contemplate what he is offering and what he expects in return. And so for these reasons, Yada Sha'ar, he will remain around. He's going to see it through. He's going to endure such that a remnant of God's people are spared a car in the end of time. This is Yah's gift to Yisrael, one which is beneficial, commendable, uplifting. I can only hope that you are unlike the children of the Exodus and you're appreciative of what Yahweh is offering. Well, I realize that I'm not deserving and that Moshe and Dode were vastly more qualified. I'm sure they felt the same way. Who are we to work alongside the Almighty? But this is Yahweh's choice. It is his approach, and he likes to share credit and acknowledge those who engage on his behalf. He created the universe. It is his style. I happen to enjoy it. I think you will too if you come to know him. But the very fact is, who are we to say that he is wrong in doing it this way? As both a father figure over his covenant family and as an aide and brother of Dode going forward, Yahweh has appointed and positioned Yada as a Nasak and his presence. And he is a father figure to the covenant. That is the role I play with the covenant family. It is also what Yahweh says, because he calls the Nakar a son. And he says that this son will have many offspring. And he infers that the offspring who participate in the covenant during the last days are as a result of the seeds that the Nakar, Yada, has sown. So Yahweh has appointed and positioned Yada as a Nasak in his presence. As a result of our collaboration, Yada Yahowah is today's shofar, one drawing Israel's attention to the signs posted along the way. Throughout its 25,000 pages, Yahweh's Mikra, his invitations to be called out and meet, are introduced, they're explained. They're so that you can capitalize upon them. You'll know what God is offering and expects in return. And so the text of this marvelous, marvelous prophecy by Yoel continues. Sound the shofar in Zion along the signs posted along the way. Choose to be set apart. Be special, dedicated to serve, consecrating a time of abstaining from what others are consuming. Choose to announce and welcome the invitation to assemble and meet. Yoel, Joel 2:15. There are 2 days each year when the shofar is blown. They are Shabuah and Towrah, the next two. Moed Mikra to be fulfilled, the two that have been assigned the responsibility of Yada as the final Zeroah, the one cultivating the seeds of that harvest, even as a Nakar. The first letter in Nakar is the Nun, which was drawn as a seed. He is the one who cultivates these seeds. So God says, sound the shofar, this ram's horn trumpet that was used to call people's attention to important events and dates, and they're coming up. The next two most important are Shabu and Towrah. So sound the shofar. Do so in Zion, marking the signs that are posted along the way. Zion is that ridge line up Moriah that is designed to tell us how we go from the home of the beloved, Dod, which is on the southern end of that ridge line, up the hill to the Temple Mount, where we have the opportunity to be part of Yahweh's covenant family. The signs pointed along the way explain also what brings Yahweh and Dod together and how they fulfilled the Moed right here on that mountain along the ridge line of Zion. And to be part of God's family, to be part of anything that God views as important, we must be Kadash, set apart. Have to be special. We have to be dedicated. And the very fact that Kadash means that we are the opposite of common means that everyone who answers this call, who responds to the shofar, is going to be apolitical and anti-religious, because those things are common. And all of those who answer the call of the shofar, particularly on Shabu and Towrah, are going to be Kadash. They're going to be set apart and special, dedicated and unique, uncommon. And this is the time of abstaining from what others are consuming. Choose to announce and welcome the invitation to assemble and meet, because there are 4 left: Shabu, Towrah, Kippurim, and Sukkah. These are the final invitations to meet. The purpose of this shofar blast is to draw Yisrael's attention to Zion, the signs posted along the way. Today, if you're in social media, you'll constantly see Jews both proudly proclaiming themselves as Zionists and the rest of the world condemning them as Zionists. Zionist and Zion is from Zion, Tsyowyn. It means signs posted along the way. In Hebrew, the TS letter, the Tazday, was a person who's kind of in an interesting prone position. Their back is leaning upwards, their face is facing forward, their hands are before them. It's the position you'd be in if at the end of the day you're reading the Torah, reading the prophets, which is really appropriate when you're speaking of signs, isn't it? The Yod in Zion is God's hand reaching down and out to lift us up. The Wah in Zion, telling us again that if you want to know how to pronounce the Hebrew Wah, look to a word like Zion. It's always the O sound, isn't it, in Zion? That's delivered from the Hebrew Wah. It was drawn in the form of a tent peg, which secures and enlarges a tent or temporary home. And it concludes with a nun, which was drawn in the shape of a sperm, conveying a child or a son, and also of seeds that would take root and grow. That is the alphabetic depiction of Zion. And these signs that have been posted along the way, they explain what Father and Son have accomplished and what they will achieve along this ridge line of Mount Moriah on behalf of the covenant family. Those who read Yahweh's directions realize how important it is to be set apart from man's ways so that we can dedicate ourselves to working with Yahweh, particularly at this critical juncture. After all, there is no other way to be part of the Shabuah or Towrah harvest than is articulated here. It is not only essential that we abstain from consuming the toxic rubbish that is poisoning the political and religious, but also that we, Kara, announce the upcoming invitation to be called out and meet with God. And in this case, while we are here to draw attention to Shabuah and Towrah, and particularly the Kippurim homecoming, the prophet is always and also calling our attention to this great homecoming, family reunion. It is the only moed without a menu and therefore assumed to be a fast. That's why you're abstaining. Further, it is the only assembly among the seven where some are restrained while others are gathered. Now, should you be listening to this before it occurs, as I have tried to make it abundantly clear, the next harvest will be reaped on the Moed assembly to meet of Shabuah of 7 sevens, which encompasses the promise of the Shabat. This substantial ingathering will transpire 7 years in advance of the fulfillment of Teruah, of Kippurim and Sukkah in year 6000 Yah, which is 2033. The time of Israel's troubles will play out in between these events and therefore last 7 years. While I've shared this information previously, since it's vital to Israel's survival, the 7 Mikre have been and will be celebrated on this schedule for all of the following reasons. Pesach, Passover, was fulfilled on the 14th of Abib, year 4000 Yah, which was a Thursday and Friday, the 2nd of April and the 3rd of April in 33 CE, 4-2 and 4-3. The Messiah and Son of God, Dowd, was brought back to sacrifice his Bashal corporal body as the lamb, allowing the Romans to crucify him to open the door to life. The eyewitness account of what occurred was scribed by Dowd himself 1,000 years in advance in his Mizmor, Psalm 22 and in 88, and then confirmed in the 89th. All of which are written in first person. The door to Yahweh's home is therefore anointed with the blood of our Savior, this kinsman, Redeemer, and Messiah, our former and returning King, Dowd, who not only volunteered for this duty after deducing everything that I have shared with you, he was the lone qualified individual in human history with the compassion and courage to witness and then endure this, but he also had the right pedigree. He was the one man who Yahweh referred to as his son. And remember what he said to Abraham and to Yishak: don't take the life of your son, your only son, whom you love, for I will provide the lamb. Matzah, unyeasted bread, was fulfilled the following day, the 15th of Abib, at the beginning of the 80th Yobel. This was the Shabbat of Friday, April 2nd at sunset, continuing through the Shabbat, Saturday, April 3rd, 33 CE. During the Mikre, Dowd's Nefesh soul was laden with the guilt, which was symbolized by the yeast, which was removed from the bread, of every covenant member, each of which he carried with him to Sheol, the place of separation known as hell. And with it, having been deposited in what is akin to a black hole of complete darkness where nothing escapes, God's children now appear perfect in his eyes. It prepares us to enter Yahweh's presence. It makes us serviceable, such that we can work with him. Furthermore, Yahweh only sees now the good in us as a result of Dod's magnanimous gift, which means we can feel very comfortable in his presence. He acknowledges the smile and doesn't see the frown. He cherishes the effort, but doesn't know when we have disengaged. God has deliberately blinded himself of all that is less than desirable so he can celebrate all that is wonderful. The best possible way for us to be perceived by the Almighty. Well, this leads to Bakorim, the firstborn children, which is symbolic of our adoption into Yahweh's covenant family. And it's on this day, the 16th of Abib, 4000 Yah, April 4th, 33 CE, that God's Bakor, his firstborn son, was released from Sheol and returned home to his father. With the complete fulfillment of the 7-day celebration of Chag Matzah, the benefits of the covenant were enabled, because on this day, Yahweh was able to enrich and empower, enlighten and enable his children. Shabuah is next on the list. It's 11 months away in terms of its fulfillment. It's a harvest of standing grain, both prominent and mature, representing the covenant family. It occurs on a Shabbat. That's interesting too, isn't it? I'm often asked about the Shabbat and the fact that I view the Shabbat as actionable. It is a verb. It is not the most laborious day of the week when there are 1,000 rules to follow that won't even allow you to push the button on an elevator. It won't even allow you to turn on your toothbrush. So much less brush your teeth even manually. It is disgusting what rabbis have done to this day. Torturous, really, what they have done to it. And I view the Shabbat as actionable. And I see it as a time where we celebrate our relationship with Yahweh and that he celebrates his relationship with us. And one of the reasons that I know this to be true is that Yahweh does not violate his own advice to us. He talks the talk and he walks the walk. The most difficult fulfillment of the 7 Moed Mikre is Matzah, when his son carried our guilt into Sheol. That is considerable work. What day of the week did it occur? That's correct. A Shabbat. The next upcoming harvest, the biggest of the harvest, when Yahweh is going to gather in his covenant family. What day of the week is it? Do you know? It's May 22nd, 2026. Correct. Shabbat. It is a Shabbat. So then we move to Towrah. There are 2 aspects of Towrah. A gleaning, when Yahweh gleans the final remnant of his covenant family, and then the sacrifice of the red heifer, where Eliah will be the master of ceremony, and Yahweh himself will ignite the flames, a day that he is canvassing the world to bring the final remnant of Yisrael to the Temple Mount. A lot for Yahweh to do on this day. What day of the week do you suppose both the ingathering and the sacrifice of the red heifer occur on? Shabbat. A Friday evening and a Saturday morning. A Shabbat. You don't suppose that Yahweh is violating his own Shabbat instructions by celebrating the relationship and being with his family in this way and lifting them up, do you? Yeah. Of course, when Yahweh opens the door to Eden and allows all of us to go back in, and we pitch a tent and we can camp out with him and stoke a fire and sing songs and be part of this first day of celebrating forevermore. What day of the week might that be on?
The Shabbat.
Oh, Shabbat. Yeah, October 7th of 2033. So my view is the Shabbat is actionable. It's a time that God celebrates his relationship. See it as a day that if you have an ordinary job, you shouldn't be doing your ordinary job so that you can focus on the relationship. But if your job is my job, the job of the Malaka, of this spiritual messenger for Yahweh, and the work of that messenger, then because I'm doing the work of the Spirit, having been imbued with the 7 spirits of Yahowah, the work of the Malaka would be that of his Bashar Herald, his Kol voice, the final Zeroah. But otherwise, you ought not be doing your ordinary work, but you can certainly engage in studying Torah and contemplating how wonderful we have it to be part of his family. So those who avail themselves of these harvests are rewarded with an express ticket to Shamayim, while they avoid, if you catch the first of the two remaining of Shabuah, well, then you miss the time of Yaakov's troubles. God specifically said there would be 3 harvests. And so we would expect those 3 harvests to take place at different times. And for the only way for that to occur with the first 3 occurring, the culmination of the first 3, Bokurim is the harvest, in 33 CE, which is year 4000 Yah, and the last 3, you look up at the menorah over my shoulder, you'll see 3 and 3, the last 3 taking place in the 120th Yobel year, in year 6000 Yah, 2033, is for Shabuah to be set apart by a number of years from the final 3. And Shabuah tells us how many years it is set apart, because it means 7. So more than most, those participating in the Shabuah harvest are especially valued by Yahweh, since they will have chosen him based upon the prophetic testimony that he has made available to us long, long ago. The celebrants will have made their choice without having their backs up against the wall, as will be the result toward the end of the time of Yaakov's troubles. This will be the largest of the harvests, and it will include Yehudim and Goyim, represented by the 2 kinds of wheat and the 2 loaves of bread, which are waved to Yahweh. This is followed by Teruah trumpets, which is an olive harvest, representing a remnant of Yisrael, some, I think, 7,000 Yisraelites and Yehudim. It will occur on a Shabbat, commencing on the first day of the 7th month in year 6000 Yah, 23 September 2033. It will be announced by a solar eclipse, a blast of the shofar, and Yada Yahowah. The 2 witnesses, Yada and Elia, will be in Jerusalem calling God's people home for 3.5 years prior to this gleaning and the subsequent homecoming. And the second day, the Shabbat of September 24th, well, it's going to be celebrated by the sacrifice of the Adamah Parah, as Elia serves as the master of ceremony, recommencing the very thing that he did 40 Yobel, 2,000 years, 888 more years previously, with the sacrifice of the bull, when he was excoriating the religious and political influences in Israel. Kippurim follows. It is reconciliations. It is the ultimate family reunion. On this day, the final remnant of Yisraelites and Yehudim will be gathered in Jerusalem, awaiting Dod's arrival with Yahweh. They will have been prepared by the sacrifice of the red heifer, no longer serving as the adulterous woman, but ready to be betrothed to her returning king. Now, this spectacular event will transpire beginning at sunset in the city of Dod, 6:22 p.m., October 2nd, 2033, the 10th day of the 7th month in the year 6000 Yah. At this time, the last of the covenant family, the chosen people, will have been prepared by Elia so that they are among those who are ready to populate the millennial Shabbat. This celebration is commiserate with Yahweh's return, with his beloved son, Dod, who at this time will anoint the Kaporeth, the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant, putting the blood of the Adam of Parah, the bull, and that of the goat, Elia, on this mercy seat in accordance with the Torah's instructions. And this will be the final opportunity because judgment will commence immediately thereafter. All the while, father and son will be celebrating, cherishing the fruit of their labor and the joy of family. Well, then, over the next 5 days, God will restore the earth to the conditions that were once experienced in Eden. And therefore, Sukkah, shelters, is our opportunity to camp out with Yahowah for 1,000 years here on earth. The party begins on the Shabat of October 7th, 2033, the 15th day of the 7th month in year 6000 Yah. It's going to be announced by Dod himself, our king, and heralded by the specter of a solar eclipse. A lunar eclipse. The solar eclipse occurs on Towrah. Thereafter, with all of God's children becoming seven-dimensional, we will witness the creation of a new universe, one to explore and enjoy forevermore. That's God's story. Would love for you to be part of it. And I appreciate you listening to this edition of Katsir Harvest on the YAHOWAH blog. I am Yada, Craig Winn.